Aztlán and not Aztlán, because in the Nahuatl language, all words have their strong syllable on the penultimate syllable. Aztlán can mean place of herons, or place of whiteness. This is the famous place from which the Aztecs departed to the later found Tenochtitlan. Some believe it never existed, others think it is just a metaphor or a legend, and others believe it exists, but its true location is still unknown. Those who think it is an invention base their opinion on the fact that there is no 100% reliable evidence from before the European arrival to provide a clue about the site. Almost everything known about that place was made in Tenochtitlan or appears in chronicles after this event. For example, the Boturini Codex, which is still adopted as a document with Spanish influence, would have been made not in Aztlán, but in Tenochtitlan, even if it was pre-Hispanic. Of course, there might have been older documents that spoke of the place, but if they existed, they were destroyed. Meanwhile, the rest of the accounts already had Spanish influence. Others think that the Mexica invented Aztlán and its supposed island from taking inspiration from the place where they finally settled. The Mexica's choice of the islet was not their decision, since some sources mention that they wandered in various places along the shores of the Lake Texcoco. But several times they were driven away by war. It was only when Tezozómoc, the lord of Azcapotzalco, assigned them that place that they would have a permanent location. This theory suggests that they embellished their origin as if they were predestined having an islet, but of the region and now as the great lords of that era. Finally, another argument supporting the theory of those who think it never existed is the one that refers that Moctezuma y Guacaminez supposed order to search for Aztlán. According to the emissaries he sent in search of it, they found it, but not physically, as they supposedly arrived at a place where they transformed it into birds and birds of prey. In these forms, they traveled to where Aztlán was located, inhabited by Coatlicue, with whom they supposedly spoke. Obviously, this seems more like fantasy scenes. The fact the Mexica, as far as we know, did not establish a real communication route between Tenochtitlan and that supposedly discovered Aztlán. Now, let's talk about those who believe it is a symbolic place. This theory would speak specifically of the bird of the Aztecs, later called Mexica, saying the representation of Aztlán, which sometimes does not coincide with other sources. We see that it is an island surrounded by water. Some think that this island could represent a woman's womb, where the masculine and feminine aspects converge to give life to the Aztecs. The baby emerges as if it's a canoe, with the water representing the amniotic fluid during pregnancy. Finally, the cave where Teocolhuacan, or Huicholes, resides is the vagina through which the baby emerges. This upon emerging from the cave vagina. The Aztecs are born into the world seeking to justify their symbolic and physical birth. Now, let's refer to the other version that seeks its real existence. It is logical to assume that they indeed migrated, and regardless of where it was, they must have a starting point. But where is that place? Most learn toward the idea that there was indeed an island. Many have sought that reference of the point of exhaustion. The obsession with that version has a problem, as we think today with droughts, that perhaps there was indeed a lake. This lake, not to mention in this era, but in the Mexica era, may now be dry, as the climate and terrain have changed over hundreds of thousands of years. Despite this climatic problem, those obsessed with the island and the lake have proposed that today there is an island that meets the requirements. It is called Mexico-Tenochtitlan, in the current state of Nayarit, which someone refers to as Aztlán, although it seems to coincide in appearance, as this place is seen in an island surrounded by water. In the past, there would have been many similar places. Today, there are others that also point to an island and surrounding area not only of water, but of salt. This could signal a translation of place of witness, with the witness actually being salt flats. This also exists today, located in the Laguna of the La Salandra in Fresnillo, in the state of Zacatecas. There we see water, salt zones, and even pre-Hispanic remains have been found. But other opinions suggest it is wrong to try to find an island surrounded by water, as there are versions to speak of Aztlán not being an island. All thought there were rivers near it. But on solid ground, in the water, or next to rivers, there are vast territorial fields that place it, starting with the farthest places. Several refer to it as being towards the north in some places in the current United States, with some location being present-day, New Mexico and California. These theories are based on the various linguistic roots found that traveled from the north to the south of the continent. These relate the Mexica to northern groups. These are some of the farthest places believed to be where Aztlán might be, but there are others already within current Mexico. In this version, not only has the island been sought, but obviously also the curved mountain, Culhuacan, also called Teocolhuacan. In Mexico, other possible Culhuacans have also been identified. The first of these was also called Tlapalan or Tonala, that is, the current Tonala in the state of Jalisco. This version suggests that Aztlán was in Jalisco territory. Another Culhuacan can be identified in the state of Guanajuato, and the foot of the hill of the same name, which will be an ancient Culhuacaltepetl. Another location in Zacatecas is also theorized. Many groups dominated the area here, placing another possible Aztlán in what is now an archaeological site called La Quemada in Zacatecas. But there are more possible Aztláns getting closer to the center of the country. The places referred to in the Boturini Codex, if their current location is accurate, are not far from the center, starting with the surrounding of what is now Tula. Some believe that the Aztecs were under Toltec rule before beginning their migration. They migrate after the Toltec fall. There were at least two groups of Aztecs, with immigrants called Aztecs Chicomostocas, Mextin. According to this version, the Mexica were simple macehuales of the Aztecs, who were the rulers in Aztlán. These ruled Aztlán Chicomostoc, known as Aztec Chicomostocas. Their servants were the Mextin, the riverside dwellers, and the fishermen of the Aztec rulers. There was even a Moctezuma who dominated the Gran Chichimeca. But in the end, due to abuses, thus we know today as a Mexica left there not peacefully as the codices show, but because of these abuses. For this reason, it is also believed that Aztlán is near what is now called Tula de Hidalgo. And again, closer to the center, we have the assumptions that Aztlán was within the lakes of Texcoco itself. Based on the fact that there was another Culhuacan in what is now called Cerro de la Estrella, at that time it was kind of peninsula surrounded by water. And we don't even have to look far, as just like other possible places. We have an aquatic place that, while not an island, is surrounded by water. And if we add the so-called Culhuacan to that, as well as verified data that the Aztecs, now Mexica, spent some time around there and dominated by Toltec affiliate groups, we have the prospect that Aztlán was in the vicinity of Lake Texcoco. This will explain why in documents like the migration strip, the places to the lake are located. so from the far north of the continent to within the lake itself. Theories have been made about the possible location of the Aztlán of the Mexica's Aztecs. To this day, it cannot be confirmed or denied the place exists. Perhaps one day the truth will be known. But 500 years ago have passed, and since the Mexicas fall, and they do still persist. But now it's up to you to decide which of these versions convince you the most as the mythical Aztlán and which side you are on. Do you believe it existed? Or was it just an invention of the Mexica?